As a diagnosable mental health disorder, nearly 1/3 show symptoms of depression. Warning signs aren't always obvious, but more common symptoms include persistent irritability, anger, or social withdrawal, as well as major changes in appetite or sleep. Mental health disorders can disrupt school performance, harm relationships, and lead to suicide, the third leading cause of death among adolescents. Unfortunately, ongoing stigma regarding mental health disorders inhibits some adolescents and their families from seeking help. Effective treatments for mental health disorders, especially if they begin soon after symptoms appear, can help reduce its impact on an adolescent's life.
So what we wanted to know, or what we knew, is that mental health disorders cannot be willed away, which meaning like we can't just pull ourselves up from our bootstraps. We can't just think it away, can't pray it away. That there are many different psychological or other treatment options, such as having a spiritual practice or exercising. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be medication. And that there is a huge stigma. Specifically, we talked about gender dysphoria, and that's still in our DSM, and that's still having to be diagnosed. What we'd like to know more is how does, and you might want to speak more to this, Jasmine, how does informed consent work to bypass stigmas in order to get the treatment you want? Do you want to talk more about this? Or does anybody have questions on that? Makes sense? Okay. When can one draw the line between neuroses and something that's more diagnosable? So I think what you meant by that was when we're just kind of anxious about something, we're just worrying about something, but where's that line between kind of normal anxiety and something more like generalized anxiety disorder where it's really impacting our health?
Right, or like even like what's the difference between being a very anxious person and having an anxiety disorder?
Right. How can we appropriately interact with someone with psychosis or delusional thinking? What other types of interventions can you have outside of medications or therapy? What is the difference between being suspicious for good reason and actual psychosis? And then, what is legal medicating versus illegal medicating? So, like prescribed medications versus using illegal drugs to self-medicate. And then where does harm reduction fall into that legal medicating versus illegal medicating? So what are some less harmful ways to help treat some of those mental health things?
Okay, I think I captured them mostly. And what we'll do, we'll just kind of go one at a time since the article sort of breaks it down into these three different components. And I think what we'll do is look at this list of the parts that we wanted to have more information on, and then see what we can come up with as a group, and what we're not able to come up with, then we'll do some research and we'll come up with an answer. So somebody with the first one around the informed consent piece, I didn't quite get what that was.
So, do you want to talk about that, Jasmine?
Oh, well, it's a process that I really don't understand. But it's just like, if you don't want to just jump into the system with some random counselor or therapist and go through diagnosis to get the treatment that you want, what are processes of going through with a counselor or psychiatrist that really truly understands you and is willing to just sign off and say, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Okay. Here.
And is this informed consent around a particular diagnosis, or just
no? It's like getting access to. I'm trying to understand if there's ways of getting access to hormones and procedures without being labeled.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Can somebody speak to that? Somebody in the room?
depends on if you're trying to get it covered by insurance. A lot, from my understanding, most doctors in Washington will prescribe hormones, and some will consent to doing gender aligning procedures without a note from a mental health professional. But if you're trying to get those services covered by insurance, that's much more difficult without a letter from a mental health professional saying, yes, this person has gender dysphoria that's impacting their life, X, Y, and Z. Sometimes, though, I don't know, it's probably up to the insurance is going to need a diagnosis. That's the thing. They only pay out for services that are based on a diagnosis. You diagnose something, you treat it, that's what they're paying for, the treatment of a condition.
So you have to have a condition.
Yeah.
That's the whole system's built. Treat a condition.
But if you can pay out of pocket, you know,
Yeah.
you can go to most any doctor and say, which I've done, I think for hormones out of pocket before, you just gone in and said, you know, it is, I want my hormone prescription, and you go to the pharmacy and you pay. And it sucks, but a lot of times you can get that without having any kind of diagnosis.
Did you want to add to that?
That's what I was just going to say. The only way I know to bypass the diagnosis, the label, is if you were to go in and pay out of pocket, because then, as a therapist, if I have an insurance, I have to bill for it. I could talk to you about different other diagnoses that we could do instead of the gender dysphoria, which could be like an adjustment disorder. That's the most neutral one in our DSM. And so I would talk to my client about that. Like so here are some other options if we're going to go through the insurance and you don't want this label, we can do that.
And that would be for like seeking therapy services around like a gender.
Right. Yes.
But it's still going to be a diagnosis. You have to put a code on it.
Yeah.
If it's insurance, yeah.
Yeah.
So hearing where there's insurance involved, in order to get reimbursed, the way our system works is there has to be a diagnosis. And also if you're working with a young person in their Medicaid, so their state-funded insurance, it's the same thing. They have to meet access to care standards, so that means that there has to be a diagnosis. And that is just the way our system works. So if you happen to be in a privileged position where you can pay out of pocket, you can afford hormones and what you need to take care of yourself, great, but I know that's not true for most people, so that's one of those system dilemmas we have. But I think the information provided felt pretty accurate to me. But it's something we can keep a list of. Perhaps this is more we want to get have access to more information on. So when we're talking about, I put general anxiety disorder. Somebody said that. Is it real? Like this is just like situational depression. Something's happened. Is it actually a diagnosable form of anxiety? Somebody was wanting to know how to tell what from what. And I think that's tricky. But I'm curious, like, how would it be helpful for you to know? Those of you who are wanting to know that in your role as a pizza class facilitator. I say that because I'm wondering what might be behind that. Wanting to know that.
I guess in my head it would be, is this kind of a yellow flag or is this a red flag?
Okay.
Is this something where someone is just tightly wound and they're nervous about everything?
Okay.
And we can work within that system? Or is this something that's really concerning and they're not in the house?
Okay.
That would be my threshold.
Does that seem
Or is it
chronic
some-
versus situation?
No, I just love
So did I.
it. Is it something that's situational, like something really bad is happening, it's making them anxious, or are they always like that? And you can kind of relax a little bit. I don't mean it that bad, but yeah, kind of. It's alarming. We talked about it earlier.
Okay.
I don't know, personally, I think that either way could be just as bad or just as alarming. You know, I think that something really catastrophic could have happened at home that could lead to some really severe, situationally, drives, depression or anxiety symptoms that could be really in need of addressing imminently because they could lead to some harm. And it might be, very much a transient state of this really bad thing just happened and I'm dealing with it. But I am in a very unsafe emotional place because of it.
Yeah, 'cause it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I guess I also think too that some people live with diagnosed disorders and are extremely in an extremely good place to be able to cope with them and don't really experience symptoms. So I think that really we should probably think about it if it does occur. I don't know. I think that usually it's so situationally based. It probably would only matter on a case by case basis, and only if there was some reason that you needed. I don't know. I don't even know what that would be. Where you would need to know is this a diagnosis or is this situational, rather than just trying to determine what is the situation and how can it help.
Yeah, I think that distinction, Brian, that you added is when is it elevated, right? So how do I know when it's elevated to sort of like it's a red flag and perhaps more intervention is needed, or I don't know what your protocol is, I need to call our consultant, or this isn't the suicide prevention and I don't want to go that direction right now because I want us to stay focused with the time we have. But when does it become elevated to really need to seek additional resources and support? So I think that is sort of what the question was. And then I'm going to take a comment and then.
Well, one thing we've seen happen a couple of times is when we have a participant who feels like they are suffering from something that requires actual care, and their parents don't believe them, or they're caught up in that idea of the stigma around mental health care, and they won't provide that child with the care they're asking for, and are just telling them, we'll just get over it. We've seen that occur a couple of times. It would be useful to know, where there's a difference between what the child feels they are experiencing and what the parents, are wanting to believe because of whatever, to know what resources are best to steer that.
And in that case, it might be you as a facilitator, where do you need to step up and really advocate more for that young person who is having some significant mental health issues, but they're not getting the help that they need. So then how do you know when that next step is? And I'm leaving this as a question mark. We will come back to the questions, but just clarifying what those are. I think what I'll go to right now and work again, I'm not going to pass these around, but this is a project that I work on in my day job, and it's going to answer questions around the psychosis, because this is part of our early psychosis initiative. And if you're not aware, the early onset of schizophrenia typically happens between the ages of 15 to 30. And if caught early, the interventions that can occur can have such a profound effect on a young person's life. This generally happens when they're in high school, on their way to college, or whatever you're doing in those formative years, and it's very traumatic. But what research has shown is that early identification and intervention can completely change the trajectory. So it's really groundbreaking, the research that's been done, so much so that in 2014, Congress had all states that receive federal funding for mental health services require them to set aside 10% of their mental health dollars to focus on this population of young people. So that's kind of how I get paid to do this today, so that's my plug. But the really great thing about this folder, which I'm not going to pass out now because you'll want to look at it, you won't pay attention to me anymore. I usually do it at the end, like open this giveaway. But what's in here, I'll have to open it this way. There's a really great video that we did with a parent with lived experience and a doctor who works on our project. It's 15 minutes. It's going to talk about early psychosis. Information for teachers, professionals, school-based professionals, a manual core competencies, how to work effectively with somebody who's experiencing psychosis. I joined a conversation outside, and I agree it's not, I think it's the same thing with any population or group of people or individual who you don't really understand their culture or their way of being in the world. You approach that with the same level of sensitivity, and oftentimes it's just going with curiosity. But the one thing that was said that I think is really important, if you can remember this, is just the one thing that you know, which was if a person is experiencing a delusion, or hallucinations. It is something that's very real to them. It's not your role to convince them that it's not real. It's not your role to go along with them in their whatever delusion it is. Really what you can do to be the most help is to talk about how it's impacting them. So what do you need to feel safe? Where can we go that you would feel more calm? You seem really scared right now. Is there anything I can do? What do you need me to know? And if you really do feel that somebody is experiencing psychosis, that's when it's sort of like elevated. How do I get a young person help? How do I talk to them? Who do I connect them with? And I won't go over everything, but because it's all in here. This is all available online. We all get a folder and a pen with the website. There's a free training on that website that you can take to get more information. And then it's updated with more information and resources. Additionally, you have my card, so you can contact me directly, and I can connect you with like a never-ending supply of mental health resources. So you will get these when you leave, along with the pen. So then we go to talking about alternative interventions, and that's kind of around the part where do you get somebody engaged in treatment. I think we're going to talk to that more when we talk about access to care. But with alternative interventions, who wants to talk about that? Like, are you wondering how do you talk to young people about what the options are? What do you want to know about that?
Well, I think, I would think that we just need to have some resources that we can direct them to as some options and see what they might be attracted to for alternative ways of approaching whatever they're going through.
Okay.
Outside of therapy and medication, right?
Medication,
Yeah.
Okay.
That they know that there are potentially other options. That if they are being labeled with diagnoses and they're identifying with that diagnosis, if there's a way of letting them know there are also other options for their way of looking at themselves and other people.
I also just want to caution that that's a really tight line to walk, particularly when it comes to parent involvement and stuff like that. But I think it is a really great opportunity to kind of give some of those resources. An example of the wrong way to do that is I saw a facilitator last year tell us to flush their pills, so that somebody, so that the foster care system would think they're taking them and that they would get their child back in front of an entire class of people. And so being mindful of like prescriptions and modern medicine and stuff like that, but also just really knowing what our boundaries are within that. But I do think that it's a really important thing to discuss with students.
Then with the medication versus self-medication and harm reduction, does Pizza Class sort of have a general philosophy or rule around harm reduction, or how you talk about substance use?
Probably. It's not something we've talked about here yet at training.
We talked about it. We had it as like a discussion topic, pretty much.
Yeah.
There's no official policy.
Yeah, there's no.
Okay. So, I mean, there's like a lot of different camps around abstinence versus harm reduction. I'm just kind of thinking the situation that you're in a school, and when you're talking about substance use, it's about how it's impacting the person's life. You may all have a different way of addressing it. I personally and professionally am a person who believes in harm reduction. I don't think abstinence works for everybody. I don't think we know the reasons why a person uses. And but what I do know about queer population is many of us are self-medicating. And I'm a person who's in recovery. I self-medicated for 25 years. And it took me a lot to get through that, to be able to put that down. So this is a tricky one. So I think, in the context of your group, be really careful. I just think you have to tread lightly on that. And then you get to that part of where is it elevated to the point of needing to reach out for more support or reaching out to the consultant or Aaron because young people are dying every day. Your young people are dying at a more rapid rate than their straight counterparts. So it's a heavy issue. But again, I think the best thing that you can offer is being that person who's there consistently to listen. And when you know, we all have the gut thing when you work with young people. People are called to work with. You just get this feeling. Trust your gut and have that extra conversation. Err on the side of I'm going to talk to somebody about this as opposed to I don't know. Kids are kids. You know, reach out and talk to somebody else. Don't try to go it alone. So I just think in that one, there's a lot of reasons why people use and self-medicate. I don't know in the context of your work how you can go with that. But people who have done it for a while, what do you have to say about that area?
I'll also say just from a programmatic, to keep in mind that if it works for you doesn't mean that it works for other folks, and kind of on that line of like what we decide to share with the classes and stuff like that, like I'm not going to go into a class and hear that somebody's smoking weed every day and be like, oh yeah, I was high all throughout high school, I'm fine. Right? You know, like
It gets better.
yeah, it gets better, you're fine, keep doing what you do, I have a master's degree, you know, you'll make it. That's not solidarity in a productive way. And so just keeping in mind that something that works for you or your friends is not necessarily going to be the proper prescription for our issues as well.
That brings up a question for me. It's part of that mandatory reporting. Like marijuana use for those under 18 is still illegal. Are we required to report it? Like,
Nope.
okay.
It is important to know though that there might be teachers or counselors in
They
the
will.
space that and they have to report it because it's school policy.
Oh,
Students should know that.
So so when a drug use comes up, just as sex comes up, just as anything else comes up, I think my thing is to remember not to not sit in judgment, to not tell them what to do, what to not to do, to instead just meeting where they are with so how are you doing with that? Just like some kind of really open, hopefully an invitation. If they don't want to talk about it, it's fine. That's if they do want to talk about it, well, really, it's not really working for me. So, what do you think about that? And just kind of see where they want to go, and really, they're going to lead. It's not my job to push that. I don't think my opinion. So mainly, I want to be there to offer. If they're saying it's not really working for me, and I'm not sure what to do. So, would you be interested in maybe find some resources to help you with that? That's where you go. And if they're like, no, it's cool, I'm totally high all the time, it's awesome, and I'm just fine with that, you're like, all right, okay, do you? Yeah, I'm not gonna, because I don't want to alienate and drive participants away from the group and sharing, and I don't want to set up a thing where nobody wants to share anything. And also because, unless it's I'm gonna go take a bottle full of pills tomorrow night. Then we get into it. Then we tripped over the other way. But if it's not, then I'm going to be like, okay, this is not any harm. I might not prefer that they do this for myself, but that's me, not that.
So, and where CPS would step in is like, I'm doing math with my 30-year-old boyfriend.
Well, yeah. So
Like,
it depends on what the story
my mom
is,
and
right?
I
Yeah.
shoot heroin. Like,
Yeah. It depends on what the story
those
is.
things that it's
Right.
okay, we've crossed the line now.
Yeah.
And if for some reason you don't know that you were confused about the line, or maybe it's Greg's area, we've got Siobhan and myself to help guide you through that situation.
But yeah, I think that's my approach, is to try to just kind of meet them where they are, and invite them to talk about it.
So with the clients that I work with, I always want to know, and I don't know if you guys have a chance to do this in the classes, but I want to know, are you using it recreationally? Like, are you guys just, you're experimenting, and you're doing it on the weekend with friends, and you're doing it in a safe manner? Or are we using this, is this a coping skill? And if it becomes a coping skill, then I talk to them about, okay, so let's think of some other healthier ways. I understand that this works and this is why it works, because it's immediate escape. You get to forget about everything, but then when you come down, is it gone? So I kind of do, so I normalize and I validate them, and I also let them know my concern is that you're using this to cope, and then you're not allowing yourself to learn other ways to cope that are healthier.
And what is there for you when you don't have access?
What's that?
And what is there for you
Right.
when you don't have access to what you've identified as your coping strategy?
I think something that Brett and I have found really effective with our groups is to sometimes revisit, if we'll look at a trend going on, and instead of addressing a person directly for whatever is going on with them personally at that moment, then we kind of, look at, okay, there's a lot of people doing a lot of things that are, self-medicate, but we kind of lump that whole idea and say, we're seeing a trend in this area, and then we bring it up for discussion in a group that way. And so, and then maybe people can offer their own ways. What are some other ways that we can self-care? Let me get, take a out your bath, or, chew gum if you're, when you're doing your homework, and give yourself a reward of, something healthy at the end of, a chapter of reading, or whatever if you're feeling stressed. These types of things, so that they're actually problem solving together and finding other ways of coping that aren't, and we're not addressing whether it's this or this thing, so that we're
We're
just
putting one person in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Right.
We're putting one person in the
Yeah.
spotlight.
not
That's-
exactly not putting one person in that position, but just that's something that's been really effective for us.
Did these cards make it around to everybody? So I brought a couple of stacks of these, and I'll talk to Erin and see if this is something that you would want to have available. I don't know if you take your folders or if you have a little box of supplies, but this is actually a very well trained and staffed recovery helpline. So it's not a recording. It's you can call for help. So if it's about somebody that you love and you want to get them resources and you don't know where to look, or you can give this card to somebody, they can call on their own. So this is a pretty good resource that we have available to us in Washington State. So maybe they don't want to talk about it, but you plant the seed, and then they have a number where they can call. And I'll hand something out at the end too, which is Teen Link, and so it's a teen version of the recovery helpline. And I haven't called it myself. It's not a team, but I hear it's very well staffed, and the people are well trained as well.
Is it by teams? Is it like a team crisis line that is?
I think, yeah, and it has some information in it, and I feel like I better not take guesses or you'll read it and know what I was talking about. But I've heard it's good, but I haven't called it. So again, with anything you're referring a young person to, you want to double check and be sure. So, you can check these out and maybe have somebody cold call it and say, yeah, this is a good experience, or maybe not just one, but have a couple people. But this could be valuable, and I'll leave those. So, to keep us going forward, we should go to group number 2.
Less than half of the adolescents with psychiatric disorders received any kind of treatment in the past year. A social stigma continues to surround mental health disorders, and mental health care is frequently difficult to access. In 2013, 10% of adolescents lacked health insurance, and when they are covered, the amount of mental health services they can receive is often limited. Initially identifying a mental health disorder is also challenging. Issues are often first identified at school. Researchers have documented a number of disparities in access. Among adolescents, those who are homeless, served by the state welfare and juvenile justice system, and are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and or transgender are often the least likely to receive services.
And what do you know about that? And what do you want to know more about?
What we know is it's difficult getting parental support for access. Sometimes students will have their situation minimized. Being told something like all kids go through something like this. There's a lack
financial means, which leads to access to other experts or lack thereof. Wait lists and lack of choice in providers. Finding LGBTQ plus friendly providers. Swapping out providers when the one you have is not working out. And then making sure that the ones that you find are culturally competent. And that it's important that just because they have a degree or quote-unquote authority, they might not be able to help you in your certain situation. And what we'd like to know is what's actually available in terms of mental health care. What private therapists there are that accept things like health care. Finding good culturally competent therapists specific to your needs. Resources for low-income folks. And legally, what are the rights to access?
We also touched on transportation as a limitation to access.
Okay. So with Access to Care 1, part of it was what you knew and what you didn't know is who are the good therapists in the community to make referrals to, and are they actually good? I mean, are they reputable? Do we know? There's two parts to that, because the first part is I could come up with a list of providers that I know in the community that from my experience and work with them, I think that they are culturally competent and good, but they may not be a good fit. So it's two different, so we can do our best to come up with a resource list of who we know to be good, safe providers in our community, and we could even break it down sort of into different sort of subject area. And I'm saying we could, if that's something you have, certainly we could do that. And the caveat is, unless you've sat with that therapist for 2 or 3 sessions, you can't really know. So a lot about a therapeutic relationship, or maybe 70% or more, is the relationship. So is it possible in your groups that if a young person was seeking counseling, you could hand them a trifold brochure of how to look for a therapist? And I don't know if that fits within what you're doing, but that might be one thing because, it's really scary. I've done a lot of therapy and I'm a therapist. So, either end, that initial conversation can be scary. So just having some tips on how to find one. So once you've got your resource list and you think you want to do it and you have your brochure, those are a couple of steps that you can help to bridge the gap. But again, it is about the relationship. And then, if it's a young person, the access part. So if they have supportive parents and their parents are insured, they're going to have a lot of great options. They are. That's, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
Unless, I don't know how many options they have, if they have state insurance.
So then, if it's Apple Healthcare or Medicaid, the doorway becomes more narrow to what's available. It would be a project, but there is possibility to say, who can young people see in this community by insurance type? So who takes Apple, what insurances do they take? I know when I was a facilitator with Stonewall Youth, we actually had a couple of therapists who would do pro bono, and they would do a certain amount of sessions, and that's potentially something that could be available down the road. But in terms of what's available right now, it would be building a resource list. And then there's also another service in our community for Medicaid eligible youth, which will be in your folder. It's called Wraparound with Intensive Services. But this is for more sort of high intensity high needs, but if you know, think that somebody, that young person you're working with might need more support, this is available. It's across Washington State. So I put the handout in there for you. So that's one resource. And the other is, again, the Recovery Helpline. And when you're talking to somebody at the Recovery Helpline, it can be, you tell them what kind of insurance you have, and they can help sort of narrow the pathway to get you to the right door. That's an overview. And then the other, in terms of looking at updating, if you have the resource list, updating that and having that available. Because sometimes it's just in that moment, if you had that available, and that could be what you get that young person connected, you want to have that sort of resource and tool at your fingertips. The challenge that's hardest to talk about is the parents. You want to have parents who aren't going to allow them to seek service. Yes. And the tension that you have to live in and hold, given that there's not much you can do, and that's just the reality. But you've done so much, right, by giving them a safe place to come. But it is hard when you work with young people, and you see them struggling, and they want counseling, and they want that support with their families are the biggest barrier. I don't know the ins and outs of Pizza Clutch facilitators, but I'm kind of likening it similar to the Community Stonewall Youth. Well, not even that, they did it so long ago. But there's only so much you can do, and if it's your role to show up and provide that safe place and resources, sometimes that has to be enough. Does that fit with Pizza Clutch?
Yes.
Okay. And it's hard.
It is
It's really hard.
It is the big part.
Yeah, and I wish I was like, oh, but you could do, that's just the reality. But if there are resources, we want you to have them, but when it comes to that other hard part, Pizza Clutch might be the thing. That's the thing to do.
Haley?
Yeah.
Do you know if there are queer-friendly counselors over at Pathways?
I don't know. I only know a couple there, but
I know they take state insurance.
yeah. That is the hard part with state insurance. It's like there's not a lot of good. I just want to be careful about what I say. It's challenging. Let's just say it's challenging. There's limited resources, and it's challenging. But what we should do, and I think what we owe to the young people that we're working with, is to do due diligence and find out who are the people that are out there, so that if they do want to access, they can. Yeah. So insurance, and then what about rights to access? What was that question? I want to make sure that we.
That was in that book, but I assume I think I know what it is. Just like when can you access
Yeah, I think it's around the 13 number.
It is 13.
And yeah, and what is that? What does that entail?
So, and I'm not speaking like as the state, because I don't know exactly. Here's my understanding of it, and help me out. But it is the law in Washington State that at 13 you have access to care. You no longer have to include your parents in seeking services. That's part of it. But it's interesting because you have your own insurance card, you have your own money. I'm 13. So it's an interesting. So in terms of this conversation, but a young person, if they're meeting with a therapist and they're doing their informed consent and all of that, they should be told their right that they do not have to share with their parents what they're talking about in counseling. So that should be information that's given to them. In terms of being able to access care on their own, I think that's tricky. I don't know how that
Yeah,
would.
they have the right to do it, but they might not have the resources to do it.
Right, the right to do it is one
Parents
thing.
holding the resources,
Right,
then
right.
they still have the power to do that.
Right, and so hypothetically, if Pizza Clutch had a couple of therapist volunteers who donated 10 sessions each, and a young person in Pizza Clutch could access those services, what you would do, you would have that information, they could contact that therapist if they're over 13 and set up that appointment. It's already paid for.
Right, you set that up for us?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I mean, we'll put it on the wish list. I totally agree. Yeah,
It's gonna supervise me, I'm not gonna be like,
Sure, I mean, yes, that comes down to finding the folks who volunteer that time.
Right.
But it's something that we would be behind as an organization.
Yeah, so it is one of those things, like if that could be, because that's one of the barriers, right? And that would be a way to address the barrier. I know that's not what this training is for, so we'll put that, I'm gonna take these notes. So what this training is for, given the resources that you have now, currently, you know, we can put together who's available now. In the future, wouldn't it be awesome if you could say, here's a list of, that would be great. So we'll,
I'm gonna talk to my tree.
yeah, I mean, yeah, so.
Gotta talk her into something.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other things like transfer, I mean, these are all the things, right, about
All the real
accessing
tangible
any
benefits.
services. So for those of you who work in the schools in the rural areas,
Or even Tumwater. Tumwater has, I mean, folks out in Little Rock and out
Yeah.
in the edges of the district don't necessarily don't always have bus access either. So
yeah,
getting into town, period,
Yeah.
is a challenge.
yeah.
What?
And so tomato doesn't even have a pizza place.
Yeah. How many of your schools have mental health therapists on site? Because this is becoming more common. So South Sound does.
I don't know Tumwater.
We have counselors, but I don't
That's
know,
not-
like
not-
teachers who went into counseling credential and like so now they're
Right.
like
that's what
teachers
that
or
Yeah, I know that is happening more. I don't know which schools it is, but that could be something that we identify. What schools have mental health therapists on site, because it's for that reason, especially in rural areas. The only place that young people are going to be seen is in their schools. And the other thing that you should know, if you're not already in a field that you absolutely enjoy, there is a huge workforce shortage in behavioral health. So if you're thinking about entering the field, now is a great time, all the way from young children to geriatric. There is a need across the board. So you can get in touch with me if you want to talk about that one. Yes. Oh, okay. Let's do the last one. Group 3.
someone else want to read the introduction and I'll do the other parts?
Right. Resilient adolescents are those who have managed to cope effectively even in the face of stress and other difficult circumstances, and are poised to enter adulthood with a good chance of positive mental health. A number of factors promote resilience in adolescence. Among the most important are caring relationships with adults and an easygoing disposition. Adolescents themselves can use a number of strategies, including exercising regularly, to reduce stress and promote resilience. Schools and communities are also recognizing the importance of resilience and general emotional intelligence in adolescents' lives. A growing number of courses and community programs focus on adolescents' social, emotional learning, and coping skills.
Yeah, so what we know is we decided that Pizza Clutch is a factor of a resilient kid, as are other sorts of supportive communities of Stonewall and things like that. So having positive, resilient role models also is very helpful. Access to care, sort of talking about all those pieces, language, basic needs are met. They have shelter, they have food, they have like those. Having your basic needs met is like a key component to resilience. Creating opportunities for vulnerability. We sort of touched on Brene Brown's work and wholehearted people. People who are resilient tend to also be able to access vulnerability. We talked about emotional intelligence as a component of resiliency, resistant to isolation, that they have inspiration and goals that can help motivate them over bumps or hiccups in their road. An awareness of self-acceptance and self-understanding are components of resiliency, and recognizing that it's a journey, and that being less resilient isn't bad. It is also not a stationary place. That developing resiliency skills is the path to being a resilient person. Things we wanted to know more about. There was questions about what is vulnerability, what do we mean by being vulnerable, how do we model resiliency, like what does it actually look like, especially if we're struggling with resiliency ourselves. And then sort of what is the youth definition of resiliency? Does our model of resiliency and how we're modeling it the same as how the kids are needing to
into resiliency. At the end of the sort of statement up above, it mentioned a growing number of courses and community programs. We want to know what those were. This idea of integrating into school and larger culture to cultivate a culture of resiliency and vulnerability. What would that look like? How do we do that at the school level, starting with Pizza Clutch, growing to larger school, and then sort of our global communities? And then sort of on a really tangible level, what are specific tools and coping skills that we can give the kids, our youth, in a quick, short way? You know, we can't necessarily give them the whole scope of vulnerability in a 20-minute session, but what are some skills? And then not only what are skills that we think are important, but what are skills that are actually helpful for the youth?
Phew, nice, wow.
Yeah,
that is fantastic. What a great
way
list.
more than we can answer today.
But here's the deal. The first thing you started with is what you provide as Pizza Clutch is huge. It is. It's a safe space. It's caring adults. I mean, that in and of itself is huge. So to not underestimate the power of that 20 minutes, is it 20 minutes? That 20 minutes that you have is amazing. And but this whole topic of resiliency and grit and those things, and I know Denali mentioned earlier, and we're talking about what are alternative forms of sort of different interventions and self-care. And it really is how do we resource the young people that we're with when they go out in the world to take care of themselves, whether that's natural supports or resources that are in the community, such as Stonewall Youth or Partners in Prevention and Education, knowing what those are so we kind of have them in our back pocket to say, hey, have you ever thought about checking out this or that? So your work is being aware of those resources and being able to call from them. And then in terms of this list and my plan, what to do with this, we're out of time, but I'm not going to take up any extra time. What I can do is kind of type these up, and then I'll make some recommendations for what you could do for next steps. And then I will also put in this resources for each of the topic areas. And so you can have little toolkits. Oh, here's something on resiliency, or here's something on. So I'll work with Erin to figure out how we can do that and start to build those resources up for you.
And Erin, I would say one of the things that kind of came out of our group was that maybe a deep dish on vulnerability and resiliency would be really awesome.
Yeah, right. And then the other thing, and I did say that I have one of these for everybody, and these are 17. So I will put the stack here. Please take one.